had the most beautiful family. My parents were Chuck and Neva Workinger, who were amazing Christian parents and raised we 3 kids to be Christian kids. And I am so thankful to have been raised in a Christian family, because it's all the difference. You know, if you don't have faith and you don't have God in your life, it's a total different picture. My grandparents were Glenn and Mary Workinger, and then on my mother's side it was Henry and Oni Cook. And then my siblings, we come down to Gary was our firstborn, my brother, who is, I'm not kidding, he's one of the best people in the whole world. My brother is an amazing man who has been my right hand. When I needed something, I could call my brother and he'd have the answer. And Gary is 3 years older than I am, and then my sister Pat came along just a year later, and she is just a year behind Gary, and we have been the best of friends from the day that I was born. Pat and I, we 3 kids. I mean, we had nothing in our life that was wrong. We had nothing that we argued about, nothing that we fought about, and it's been a beautiful ride with my parents and my siblings.
Well, my parents were Jim and Dorothy Collins, and we kind of had a rough life. We were poor and always lived in rented houses, and I had 2 sisters that always beat me up with fly sweaters, and yeah. So
that's
anyway,
the truth.
Yeah. We lived in houses where you wiped the snow off the windowsills in the morning because it was cold, and so we didn't, not a lot of memories in the household. My mother had a lot of, she was schizophrenic, so she was in the hospital a lot, and
It
we
was
were,
a rough childhood.
yeah, it was a rough childhood, but we survived it.
Yeah.
And then Judy came along, and I was the best thing that ever happened to her. At least I tell her that, but I know better, because she is the best thing that ever happened to me. So.
My childhood was a picture perfect, and I don't want to paint this picture that is so beautiful, but it is. And it's a childhood that I would choose for myself. And he gave it to me way back when I was a little girl. He gave all those things to me. And it was being raised, first of all, I was born right there on 200 East, where one of my nieces live now, and my brother lives across the road. I was born there. We went to Saginaw for 7 years, where I lived there for 7 years, and it was a beautiful time, beautiful time. We still have friends from then, from that many years ago. We still communicate with those same people. Of course, all of the adults are gone, all of Mom and Dad's friends are gone, but they were all Methodist people. Dad and Mom started in the church. They found friends in the church, and that was the best thing they ever did. And so then we moved back to Monroe, right to the same farm just across the road from where I was born. We moved back there, and Daddy he bought a farm for Gary. Gary wanted to farm, and so did we girls. We were so excited. And then we started getting animals, and that was my forte. That was my thing, was the animals, and being outside and bedding stalls and being in the haymow and swinging on the rope swings and playing in the tunnels, and that was pure joy for me that Mom and Dad had a life for us all picked out like that, because it was beautiful. I was 10 when we came back, and then Daddy started boarding horses, which was my thing. And we had a horse named Blondie, and she had a colt, and we named her Princess. And well, I guess it was a little filly, but we named her Princess, and those were my pride and joy. I had a lamb named Judy, and a duck named, let me think just a minute, what was Hermanana? We named him Herman. We thought he was a boy and he was a girl, so we changed it to Hermanana. But Mom even took the duck feathers from Hermanana and made me a pillow out of that duck. And So that my favorite things of my childhood would have been being with the animals and being outside with Dad and Gary, and Pat was the cook. And then we got dairy cows, and the dairy was a big thing for us. It was a lot of work, but it all worked out great. We all learned a lot from our childhood. My school days there were just beautiful. I met awesome friends in the 4th grade who I still have to this day. There are 13 of us that still get together from my 4th grade kids. So we've been together 63 years from our 4th grade our friendships. Lake George was our first lake we ever went to, and that's what it got us really getting into our lake house. And that's when we still lived in Saginaw. We went with my aunt and uncle, Flo and Renee Brandt, and their daughter. And that's where I met a gal that taught me how to swim. And she, of course, was so much older than me. I thought she probably was 15. And she taught me how to swim, and that was an amazing thing. And she was my best friend while we were at Lake George. So from Lake George, that kind of brought us into the experience of Oliver Lake, where we still are now. And I was pregnant for Jimmy. I was 19 and pregnant for Jimmy when Mom and Dad bought that cottage with Flo and Renee and Karen and Larry. They all bought it together. And that's where our experience started. Then it wasn't long till some of them bought another cottage. And then that's when Dad decided to buy his permanent cottage where we are at now. And we've been there 53 years on the lake. So it's been a beautiful ride at Oliver Lake. Oliver Lake has become our second home. Yeah, it's our second home, and our kids love it, and I hope they continue to love it. I hope they continue to say that that's their happy place. That's what's kept us together. Those sleepovers and all the kids laying all over the floor at the lake house. And then we decided to remodel, and we made room in the loft. We built a loft and a garage on it, the best thing we ever did. Of course, Dad and Mom were still here for a little while because they gave up their cottage to us before they passed, of course. And we did that remodel, and Mom and Dad loved it. They just thought it was the best thing ever. So that was that's kind of how we got the start at the lake house, and our kids dearly love it.
I was born in Fort Wayne. I remember like I was 3 years old. I just kind of remember we lived in a house in Fort Wayne. Then we moved out on the county line. Well, actually, it was in Curryville. I don't know if anybody knows that. That's 400 north and 800 east in Wells County. And then we went from there, we went to, that was 400 north then. Moved into another rented house. Then we moved into another rented house on 300 north. Then my parents moved to Decatur, and I was like a junior. So I lived with Bill Griffiths, which had been Nolan Griffiths' mom and dad, and they farmed, and that's always what I wanted to do, is always help them farm. And when I was a junior, my dad died. He had a heart attack when he was 49. So then my mom was left alone and still with the health issues, and it was just kind of a struggle all the way. And then I met Judy, and she straightened me out. Me and Judy met in high school. I remember her in school, but didn't really know her. And she asked me to go to that Sunshine Banquet. So I stalled her off for about 2 weeks, and I finally said, I'll go. So.
Yeah, because it was too windy to haul rocks.
Yeah, that's the excuse I give her.
And too wet to plow.
Yeah, so therefore I thought, well, I'll go then. So that's how it happened.
He was goofy. I loved him for that. That's what drew me to him, though, was his humor.
And she always had a lot of friends, and I always hung with all them. Yeah. So, yeah. I had a lot of guy friends, too, but they were the rougher crowd from Pleasant Mills. But we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
We did. We did. We were all one great big group, and we just had a blast. Just had a blast. Got my first, not my first kiss ever, but my first kiss from Ron that night, and I just knew when we were together and he decided to kiss me goodnight, I just thought, you know what? I really, really like this guy. I really want to be with him if he'll be with me for some time together and see where we could go. And it just kept going, and it just became a beautiful thing. And I'm so thankful that I got him. I'm so thankful I asked him for that first date. Yes.
And the reason I stuck with her, no dad, I thought she was rich.
Yeah.
Because I was poor.
He got a rude awakening. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No, we've had a lot of fun over the years.
It's been so good. We've taught each other so many things. He has taught me how to not be so, I don't want to say perfect, but not so, this girl that was raised in a home, in a family that was, I don't want to say so much better than you, honey, but I had an easier childhood.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, an easier childhood. He taught me how to have a sense of humor, and boy did we ever. We had so much fun. So much fun. A typical date back then, Ron would come to our house and we'd hang out. Or we'd go over to Nolan and Lorraine's and work in the shop. Nolan had a beautiful shop where Ron loved to work on cars and tractors, and I would go with him. And I would sit and watch him do his stuff. And I tried to be where he was at, and he tried the same. And we would spend time at my folks' and time at Nolan and Lorraine's, and they were so good to Ron.
And our typical date was getting in my car, and it was called the Happy Hump in Decatur. Put $2 worth of gas in your car, you drive all weekend.
Yeah.
Now you can't even get to
Go
town.
around and see everybody that's in town and
You just drive around,
yeah.
drive around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a typical date for
Yeah.
us, a typical hangout. We didn't do like movies and stuff because we couldn't afford them.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But we had so much fun doing what we did. Whatever we did was fun. As far as our getting married and our dates and things, Ron got me a ring. I was still in Ball State going to school. And one evening we went and walked downtown in Decatur and looked in the windows of Icorn, and he said, "Which one would you pick?" And I picked one out, and it was called the Orange Blossom was the setting. I still remember that. I do not have the diamond anymore, but I have the setting. But I lost my diamond, and then he bought me new rings then after that. But anyhow, so he presented, he didn't get down on one knee, it wasn't anything fancy, but he bought that ring at a later date and came to Ball State and put it on my finger. But it was a thing that we didn't tell right away because I wasn't certain when we could get married or what, and I didn't discuss it with Mom and Dad at that point. So, and then a point came along where we said, you know, he was going to be going to military and off, and I was pregnant for Jimmy, and we decided that it's time that we put this thing together, and we were both happy to do that.
Before we got married, and he was just out of high school, which was in '66, I joined the military. And it was kind of a thing back then, you could join and be delayed before you went in. This was like 4 or 5 months, 6 months maybe before I went on active duty. Mm-hmm. And that was in '67, and I was 17 at that point. I went to Fort Wayne to enlist. It was me, Judy, and Diana McCullough, Rudderbush at that time. Anyway,
Yeah.
So she went with me in to get enlisted, and Judy sat in the car because she was mad that I enlisted.
Because I didn't want him to enlist. Yeah. But Diana said, "I'll go with you." Yeah. Yeah. Of course, she was always ready to do whatever.
Yeah. So anyway, we enlisted, and then we went on active duty in '67, and went to boot camp and infantry training, and from there we come home on leave for I think 2 weeks, or a week maybe, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Then went back and I was in artillery. So then I got stationed in Quantico, Virginia, and that time then I come home, and we got married at that point.
Yeah.
So I was in Vietnam was in the service for 2 years and 8 months, and I spent 20 months overseas. And when I come home, I was 20 years old. And then high school, service and home at 20. And she stayed with her mom and dad.
Stayed with Mom and Dad, and during that time he came home in...
I was in Quantico, Virginia, and we had Jim.
Yeah, we had Jimmy, and he left when Jimmy was 2 weeks old. He left for Vietnam and didn't come home till Jimmy was 15 months old. And when Ron walked up, Jimmy said, "Daddy." He called him Daddy because my mom was so generous and to keep pictures out, and we always would point at the pictures and say, "This is Daddy." Every morning we'd say, "Good morning, Daddy," and night night to Daddy. And when he came home, he said, "Daddy." He knew it was Daddy.
We had no cell phones when we was overseas, so the only communication was letters. So sometimes it would be a week or two before she'd ever...
Merriman would bring them in a big stack, and I'd get to read them. But that was our only connection, and that was tough. Not hearing from him for months and months, and not knowing.
It wasn't quite that long, but at least 2 or 3 weeks sometimes.
Oh, at least, honey, because they'd be stacked up when Ross would bring them.
But the nice thing was, it was free. I just wrote free in the corner instead of putting a stamp on it.
Yeah. So our wedding date was July the 9th, 1967. And the day was a little hectic because, you know, on that day, you know, you're busy doing this and that and hoping everything is going to go right, and it did. It went for the best it could be, for the hurry up that we did to get married. And my sister was my maid of honor for the wedding, and Nolan Griffiths was the best man for Ronnie. And Reverend Charles Elam married us that day. But Ron, can you remember the time we got married? I don't remember the time of day.
It was in the afternoon.
It was a beautiful day, though. It was a sunny day that we got married. And we just, you know, back then it was simple. We had cake and punch and nuts, and we had...
And they went home.
Had a few people down in the church basement, and we opened our gifts back then. You know, you stood and you opened every gift so everybody could see everything you got, and things are so much better today. But yeah, we had a beautiful day, and we honeymooned that night at Oliver Lake. We stayed in the first cottage that Mom and Dad bought with Karen's and Flo and Renee, and we stayed till Tuesday only because he had to get back to Quantico. So when we came home, Mom and Dad were so excited. Oh, I should tell you something about our honeymoon. My mom sent us food to fix, and she sent us a frozen chicken.
A whole chicken.
A whole chicken that I had to figure out how to cut up. So together, we figured out how to cut up this chicken.
Well,
so
the pieces kind of look like this, so that's where we cut it off.
Yeah. So that was neat, though. And we probably were hungry, be my guess. Yeah, but that was in July, so we went swimming and boating, and Mom and Dad had a boat there, and it was just a beautiful little honeymoon. Stopped at Twin Six. I want to bring that up. Twin Six is in Walketville, and we stopped there to get gas, enough to get home, and that Twin Six now is a restaurant. But it was a gas station at the time. Did it have food in it? Did
I don't remember, because it was at night when we was there.
Yeah.
It's called Twin Six because it was a Phillips 66 gas station back then.
Yeah.
So now it's
Twin Six. So now it's Twin Six for 66 restaurant,
yeah.
Which we really appreciate. We go past it and they said, "There's our Twin Six." Yeah. So yeah, a beautiful little honeymoon, and back home, and he gone, and I was pregnant for Jimmy, and I stayed with Mom and Dad, and we had a beautiful life with Mom and Dad. They took such good care of us, and fell in love with Ron. Really fell in love with him. So let's see then, from there, honey, you came home.
Came home the first time from
months.
Overseas, and we bought our first house.
So Jimmy was born while Ron was just before he left to go to Nam, and he was born on September the 19th, 1967, which was a couple months early. He was a tiny little sweet baby boy. And then we bought our first home here on 500 West, 2617 North. And we bought that in 1968. 1968, December of 1968. And then
our first car together too.
And our first car, we bought
which
our
we
Mustang,
still have.
65 Mustang we bought together. Yeah, back when he came home on leave, we bought the car and the home. And then Rhonda, Daddy came home in July of
69.
69, and on April the 5th of 1971, we got a beautiful baby girl that was just what I ordered. I remember sitting her up on my lap and looking at her little side view and calling her my little chick. She had the sweetest little nose, just little turned up nose and dark hair, and just exactly what we ordered. Looked a lot like Ron, I thought, but today everybody says she looks like her mom. But anyhow, we have our 2 children who were a dream to raise. You know, of course, we had kids that were kids, but for the most part, they were very easy to raise, very, very loving, very easygoing children, who they still are today. They are beautiful, beautiful kids. Couldn't ask for better kids. They take so good care of us. Back when they were little, we took them on little ski trips, and they loved snow skiing, water skiing, helping us take care of the piggies. They loved to chore. They loved all that stuff.
That was just briefly. They just briefly liked it.
Yeah, when they were little, they liked to chore. When they got older, no, they didn't like to. Jimmy would come in, like, did I just have to turn those augers on? Yeah, but for the most part, our kids were very easy to raise. They loved sports. They both were in sports of all kinds. Rhonda was a swimmer from the time she was 10 until she graduated, went to Senior Olympics, did a beautiful job. And I was the bus driver for her then. And I would take the extra trips and take all the swim kids, and we had a blast. All the parents and the kids going to all those weekend swim meets. And Jimmy was a football player, and yeah, it was a beautiful ride with our kids as well.
So when I was still in high school, after I got out of high school and graduated, I went to work at Franklin Electric. Lied about my age, told them I was 18 and hired in there. And then when I come home, I had a job at Franklin. I think I worked there like 3 months maybe, and then I got in at Goodrich. And I worked there for 6.5 years. Three strikes later.
There to the piggy farm where the kids helped.
Pig farm 10 years, and then we had an opportunity to get into the fuel business, and we did that for 30-some years. Yeah.
And I started my careers with being a root beer stand girl. I delivered root beer and hot dogs to the cars, and it was called Morning Star root beer, I believe, or Star root beer, maybe just Star root beer. But Gerald Morningstar owned the root beer stand at that time, and I loved it. If I'd get a quarter tip, it was like, wow. I remember it was so fun.
But gas was only 22 cents.
Yeah. So from there, I worked for Farm Bureau Insurance in Monroe. Got my license and worked with Paul Sprunger. Actually, Ray Miller gave me my first part-time job there, and then they hired me full-time when I got my license. And then from there, because we had 2 children at that time, it was hard for me to organize my kids and organize Ron's different shifts that he worked.
So I could watch him during the day, kind of.
It was just too hard, and so we decided I needed to quit and do something different. And I found my beautiful school bus job. And then went right into hauling Amish kids to school with a van.
That was kind of a fluke how that happened.
Yes, and I loved every minute of it. And that was 48 years of my life that I did that. And then, of course, retired. COVID came around, and it was perfect timing. Then Ron got ill, and I got ill, and it just, I mean, God just took care of everything. He knew the timeline. He knew when we needed to do things, and we followed. We tried to listen, And I think we listened and did things as we should.
We were forced to.
Well,
I mean, that's how it happened.
my sickness,
Right.
but I retired before
Yeah.
that, yeah. But you were forced to retire but it was time. It was time. We were supposed to be listening then too. Yeah.
That's what got my attention.
So that was basically what we did as our careers up until today. And
Farm, we bought our first farm in 87.
That's right.
I
We
think,
have to put our
87.
farm in there.
We bought a farm over on 300 North towards Decatur. And I bought that and never told Judy. Her sister-in-law told her that we bought it.
I said, you spent that much money without asking me. But it all worked out perfect. He said, Judy, did I not do okay? And I said, yeah, you did, but you could have told me.
And there was an old guy that lived here. He was a hermit.
Lived here.
Glenn Roth was his name. He asked me one time if I would farm his farm. He had this 40 and a 40 across the road. And so I started farming it. We took the corn off that he had planted. We took it off in the spring instead of the fall. Took the corn off and then we planted.
It was too late to get it when he asked us.
And he asked me, his tractor broke down, and I took it to South Adams to the thing that they do down there, farm equipment, and got it running for him. And then I think it quit again, and then he used my tractor. I had an old Lamb, and he farmed with that. He'd drive it to town and all over the place. And then I'd take him to groceries on Fridays. I'd pick him up and take him in the grocery store. And I remember it was tourney time in basketball, and he was a big-time basketball fan. He played basketball, I guess, when he was in high school. And he said, well, looks like Adams Central's going to get beat tonight. I said, oh, who they play? And he said, don't matter. Like, they were that
Whoever
bad.
they would play that night, they were going to get beat. They had a very poor team that year.
He had dry humor,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, he was good, Glenn.
And
Yeah.
and we farmed it for a couple, 3 years. And I come down here one Saturday night and found him dead in the back porch. It was back over in that part of the room. And then they auctioned the place off, and we bought this in '88. And then the other side
No, we
went
bought this in 90, honey.
90. Okay,
Yeah, when
Okay.
Kaylee was born.
okay. Anyway, we bought this in the house. And we sold Jim the house and a little land. And the house used to sit 40 feet up that way. And they put a basement, and then they just rolled the house on top of the
They
basement.
made a beautiful home out
And
of
then he
it.
gutted it out and remodeled it, and then me and him built that hog house together, and yeah, that's how
So
it all
today
began.
you're still doing your piggies and
Yeah.
farming.
Yeah,
So you're still doing something. You aren't completely retired. We're still farming 80 acres and raising hogs. So
Taking
that's
care of
good.
you.
It's all just, it's good. Taking care of me, that's a big job.
it is, but we love every minute of it.
Yes. Ron and I had decided back in November of 2002 that our house down home was a little bit too big, and we were thinking about building a little home out here in the field. And Jim and Becky spoke up and said, you know, Dad and Mom, we'd really like you to keep that property. You know, we've got kids that may need a home and blah, blah, blah. And to put another property on here and have that, you know, someday to try to sell with this and that down there. And so he said, would you like to swap houses? And I love this house, but it still was bigger than what Daddy and I needed. But of course, it was beautiful. We all had our hands in making it come together for Jim and Becky, and of course involved in every paint job and wallpaper job, and just loved this home. So it was a no-brainer for Ron and I, because the pigs were here, his barn's here, his farm is here. Ron and I moved into this home in 2002, and we started doing a little fixing up here and there, and it was the perfect swap. When we were down home yet, we always had a horse in the lot. Our Kaylee Joe was a big horse rider, and we made sure it started out with Johnny when he wanted to be a cowboy. And we found this little white pony from the zoo, and they sold it to us for a song and a dance, and threw in a little saddle and everything. And we had this old cattle trailer of Gary's, not old, but the cattle trailer that we brought him home in. and surprised everybody on my mom's birthday. We brought him home. Well, see, that would have been, oh golly sake, September 27th, 1992, we brought the first pony home for Jonathan, and he thought he died and went to heaven. He was a cowboy, and he rode.
It was Snowball.
We named him Snowball. He was all white. Of course, that was typical name for the kids to name him. And then from there, we got a Ginger that Kaylee took care of, and from there there were 13 different horses that we went through from between that home and this home. So when we came back down here, we brought just one horse with us that multiplied to more horses and more for Kaylee, and it's been really, really fun being in the horse business with all of our kids, because then the little girls started to ride and they showed in 4-H, and it was good. Johnny then decided he wasn't a cowboy, but the girls became cowgirls. So we always had somebody interested in riding, and that was my thing, because as a child, that was my
love.
That was my love, is to have a horse in the barn. Of course, my brother didn't like it because he had to clean them, but that was my love, my horses. And I hope I still see my Dixie.
When I was in the service, I rode a motorcycle to Quantico, Virginia. Took off on a Sunday night, had a wreck, fell asleep. And when we had our wedding, my nose was boogered up from having that wreck. I was in the hospital, concussion.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So then we got rid of that motorcycle, and then over the years, we had motorcycles, 2 or 3 of them.
I had one of my own.
Yeah, she had one, and Jim, he got a little one. And
we liked to ride.
So we sold the motorcycles, and there were several years we didn't have one.
Middle school, wasn't it, for the kids?
Probably.
We were into so many things.
And then later on, when the kids were all married, I went and bought me a Harley, a Sportster, but it was too small for her to ride, for both of us.
I could ride it by myself, but
Yeah.
for 2 of us, it was
Yeah, it was too small.
too small.
So then I got an Ultra Classic, a big one, and then we could ride it. But my legs, after my ankles were operated on, my legs got weak, and we fell over twice on it. And I burnt my ankle real bad one time, and she says, I ain't got to ride it again unless you put another wheel underneath of it. So then I got a trike, and so then we rode that and really enjoyed it.
And that's been really fun.
Yeah, you don't worry about falling over.
We're hoping to ride this summer.
You bet. We rode when we first diagnosed it.
Yeah.
We took a ride on it.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
We don't worry about falling over on it. It's got a back reverse on it.
Yeah, it backs itself up.
Yeah. So yeah, we've had toys and we've had joys and we've had all this good stuff, haven't we,
Yeah.
honey?
Yeah.
Yes.
Our life of what it is today is probably because of the friends we've made and the faith and the friendships that we've made over the years, which has helped us a bunch.
All Christian friends, and
Yeah.
they've been there for us every minute. Our friendships go so deep. They're just many, many years plus many, many people. People just kind of come out of the woodwork when you need something, and it's like, hey, I'm here for you, and they have been. So I think that's through our church, going to church, learning to love those people, and they love us. And that's where it started. You have to have faith. You have to have a church. You need a church family that you can talk to, that you can have fellowship with. So important to have fellowship with Christian people. And you can do that outside the church, but I think it's a really, really good beginning, is to get yourselves in a church and find your friendships there. And our school friends, it just so happened that we all kind of ended up on the same page as far as our faith, and it's because we have Bible study. We talk about it all the time when we're together. Jesus is the topic. And it never always used to be that way when we were raising the kids and they were little and middle school and all. We had other things,
Priorities.
but as we got older and the kids left, our thoughts went other places, and we really grew in our faith and being joyful and peaceful. And joyful is a big word for me, that God has given me complete joy and complete peace through this illness. And the day after we were diagnosed, the crying was pretty much over. There was a little crying, but it was pretty much over, that we said, you know what, God's got this. God went before me, and He knows the plan. He knows where I've been. He knows where I'm going. I've been forgiven, and I'll meet him someday. I know I will see Jesus. I'm so, so thankful for that.
Your true friends are people that know everything about you, but like you anyway.
Okay, and
so
Ron and I have a favorite Bible verse too that we've kind of learned to lean on, and it's Romans 3:23, and it talks about that we all fall short. You know, none of us are perfect, and we're only saved by the grace of God. It's the only way we're saved is by His grace, and thankful for God's grace and mercies. But that's kind of one that was given to me by Mary McCullough many years ago, that she felt a little heartache for Judy, and she wrote down some verses, and that verse was one that I kept. That one popped out, so it's thanks to Mary that she took the doubt away from me by giving me these verses. So I'm so thankful for. There's our other family. You know, we have so many extended families that are such blessings to us. Very blessed. Along with that favorite verse on that line, it was a coincidence this winter that Johnny and Sheena were at the lake when the lake was frozen over. And Johnny said, "Grandma, the lake is frozen." And I said, "Johnny, if you could just go step off of the seawall onto the ice and get us a picture of you on that frozen ice, because we don't have any." And then Kaylee found another one for us. But anyhow, so he said, "I could do that, Grandma." So the next morning they get up, and the sunrise was absolutely gorgeous. And the two of them went out, and Sheena sent Johnny out on that ice, or he chose to, but he went out quite a ways on that ice, and he stretched his arms out like this for the picture, and it is a sunrise, which we call it from the east to the west. It was a little bit turned, but we're calling it east to west. And as soon as he sent me that picture, I looked at that and I said, "Oh my goodness, Ron." I said, "This is far, God's love stretches us from the east to the west." I said, "We've got to use that." So we had a big canvas made of Johnny with his arms stretched out, and we had a sign made that goes under that. "I love you as far as the east is from the west." And we're teaching all of our greats that, and we want them, when Grandpa and Grandma say, "This is how much I love you," and we say it, and then we'll ask, "How much do you love us?" I just asked Ruger yesterday,
yeah,
and he said, "From the east to the west, Grandma." Yeah. So that's something that we want to leave for our kids, is how much God loves us and how much Grandpa and I love every one of our family and our friends. It reaches out from the east to the west. Our love is vast in His name.